Hi friends, which legends are currently best friends in the lore of Apex Legends? Well, today we're going on a journey through the Apex Legends lore to explore the closest friendships and find out who really are best friends. I'm trying to bring back Apex Legends lore, so get this out there, let's get some views and let's get Respawn making Apex Legends lore again. So the first best friendship we're going to cover is Loba and Jamie. Loba's had a tough life, as you may know. Revenant killed her parents when she was young, and she's had to work hard to climb the ladder to become the renowned thief she is now. But that history has also meant she doesn't trust people easily. For a while, it felt like maybe she was alone in life. That was until one day she took out a bunch of thugs to save a blue-haired boy, and his name was Jamie. They quickly became friends, and through working together on jobs, their friendship grew stronger. Jamie was even on a mission with Loba where she was able to find her mother's long-lost fan, which she would eventually steal back, and of course you know that would become her heirloom. And Jamie will often express how he always has Loba's back, just like a true friend would. And that does even see Jamie having to stand up for Loba, even when others say how she's a predator and that she'll devour her friends if they get in her way. Jamie still stands up for Loba. He just feels her pain, and he understands how her witnessing Revenant kill her parents has caused her to be the way she is. They're so close in fact, Loba even knows Jamie's favourite food order, which she does bring him when she's able to. And as part of this friendship, we see Loba place an amount of trust in Jamie as well in her mission of revenge against Revenant. Jamie used his technical skills to track down Revenant's source code and even get the schematics to where that source code was located. And that friendship goes beyond just Jamie helping Loba with his technical skills. Loba even trusted Jamie with sending Revenant source code through the phase runner on Samathi, which would send Revenant source code years away from where they were. Of course, Jamie didn't actually end up doing it, but only out of care for Loba, something Loba wouldn't be happy with, but we did see how much Loba cares about Jamie when he was savagely beaten and ended up in hospital, a situation that really did upset Loba. And ultimately, you can see how these two have been through a lot together, and while we haven't seen much of Jamie in the recent Apex lore, we know how strong their friendship really is. Up next, we've got Mirage and Pathfinder. I mean, Pathfinder is kind of friends with everyone because bless his heart, he just doesn't know how to see someone as not a friend. Mirage does stand out as a very special friend for Pathfinder though, because actually Pathfinder very much often calls Mirage his best friend, and Pathfinder certainly referred to that a lot when he was on his mission to find his creator. There's even a whole chapter called Mirage, My Best Friend. On Mirage's side, maybe the best friendship is a little bit thinner, but there are definitely moments there when Mirage shows how much he really does value Pathfinder. And you do get a glimpse of that when you see Mirage try to throw a party which none of the legends apart from Vantage turn up to, and you get to see how hurt Mirage was about, of course, all the legends not turning up, but especially Pathfinder. The good news is that didn't break their friendship because it turns out Mirage just forgot to send out the invites, and so they'd go back to being best friends very quickly. Now you might be thinking, why are these two best friends? It seems a bit strange, and we've seen in the lore how these two actually ended up best friends. After meeting Victor Maldera, Pathfinder realizes he was made for something special, and did in fact have some semblance of a creator to find. And that was partly triggered by this recording. He didn't know at the time, but this is actually Amelie Paquette, Watson's grandmother. And while that's a bit of a sidetrack, it led Pathfinder on a mission to track down his creator, and eventually he would end up in a bar on Solace. Here, he met Elliot Witt, who was bartending, you'll know him as Mirage, and the two started striking up a friendship. After Pathfinder got tricked into building a house for two random guys at that very bar, Mirage helped Pathfinder to see that he was being taken advantage of. Pathfinder also has Mirage to thank for being in the Apex games, because Mirage was the one that suggested Pathfinder join it so he could find his creator. And what I like about these two and their best friendship is that they kind of fill the gaps in what each other are looking for. Pathfinder lost his creator, and he's really just looking for someone that really respects him and is willing to give him some time. While Mirage on the other hand lost his brothers, and he's kind of looking for that support mechanism given his mother's ailing mental condition. and that's kind of where Pathfinder fits that void. For our next best friendship, we've got Wattson and Wraith. Now I know there are lots of fans that feel like this could actually be in the relationships video instead of a friendship video, because if you haven't heard of it, there's a well-known connection between Wraith and Wattson where people combine them together and they're called DarkSparks. And to be fair, we do know there is an Apex multiverse out there, so maybe DarkSparks really is a thing out there somewhere. In this universe though, let's look at their friendship. Now Wattson and Wraith's friendship actually dates back to before the Apex games. While Wattson and her father were on King's Canyon, Wattson one day saw a ghost in Singing Labs, and Wattson really thought that was a real ghost. Don't forget, Wattson was fairly young at this time, just a naive teenager, and it turns out that ghost wasn't really a ghost, it was just Wraith doing her Voidwalker things. You see, Wraith had arrived in this dimension without her memory or knowledge of this place. She didn't even know that there were other people on the island until she encountered Luke and his daughter Natalie, whom you'll know as Wattson. Actually, for a bit, she didn't even see Wattson, she just saw Luke. And she heard Luke calling for Natalie, and that kind of made her think, 1, her name was Natalie, and 2, she also thought Wattson's father was her husband, which was kind of funny. And that's in part what made her do the portal thing to Wattson to try and scare her off. And that then ties in with Wattson testing her bubble dome theory to create the ring technology, where she set the forest on fire on King's Canyon, and she passed out and almost died from that fire, but Wraith luckily stepped in to rescue her and carried her back to her father's cabin. So that's where the ghost story comes from, and actually how these two became friends. And we would later see through the Apex games, with both of them being legends now, this little inside joke being teased across the games, where Wattson will often tease Wraith about seeing a ghost, and that would then make Wraith giggle. We also know Wraith keeps Wattson's mementos with her. There's an important document with a little bit on her history in this folder, and with that, she keeps a little note from Wattson, as well as a picture of them together. Also, if you go to Wattson's room, next to a picture of her and her father, she has a picture of her and Wraith, which really gives you an idea of how these two see each other as very close friends. Moving on to Mirage and Rampart as our next best friendship. This is an interesting one, and the truth is, they did live together for a while, they were roommates, and Rampart even set up her mod shop in Mirage's bar. If you remember, Rampart's first shop burned down, no thanks to Big Sister, and so she needed a space to set up shop. And while Mirage didn't initially want her to set up shop in his bar, after some convincing from Wraith, Mirage started to see the business side of it, and he eventually accepts Rampart in, and that's kind of the start of their friendship and how they begin to grow closer. They in fact became so close, you would often hear Wraith trying to joke with Rampart about Rampart needing to get back to Mirage, among other things, where Wraith was essentially teasing Rampart about the time she would spend with Mirage. Since then though, it has been confirmed that what we were seeing between these two was actually a very strong best friendship where they kind of viewed each other like siblings, and it seems like they were on the same page in terms of how they feel about each other. As that kind of sibling you often play around with, and sometimes they annoy you, and sometimes you annoy them, but at the end of the day, they support each other like best friends should. It's also worth noting Rampart is one of the few people that knows about Mirage's mother's condition, and she's also one of the few people that Mirage has actually introduced to his mother, showing a level of trust between them. Now, if we're talking about best friends, we can't forget Vantage and Ekko. You might laugh at this one, but don't forget, Vantage grew up with next to no human contact aside from her mother, so it makes sense that her best friend might be an animal. Like Vantage, Ekko was young when they met on a marooned spaceship on the desolate planet Vantage lived on with her mother. Their relationship started on rocky ground. Vantage killed Ekko's mother, and when she met Ekko in that ship, it began to fall down an icy canyon, leaving Vantage with no option but to grab Ekko to save him. Unfortunately, Vantage is injured and left in life-threatening condition, with only Ekko knowing of her location. They form a fairly quick bond, and that allows Ekko to go and locate Vantage's mother. Vantage's mother in turn activates a beacon, which saves Vantage's life, but of course at the cost of her mother's freedom. This life-changing event is part of what's formed this strong bond between Vantage and Ekko. There was even a moment where Vantage took Ekko to the zoo and he met his own kind there for the first time in a long time, and that kind of made Vantage realize he might have a better life there in that zoo with his own kind. So she does the hardest thing she can do, and she opts to leave him there where he seems happy. Walking out, dejected at losing her best friend, she can't think what she'll do now. But to her surprise, she hears a little whimper in the corner and Ekko lands on her forearm. It turns out Ekko doesn't want to be apart from Vantage either. Now maybe it's just the popcorn, or maybe it is a real friendship that we've seen, but you can't deny that these two really do care about each other. And you know what they say, if you can't make friends with humans, you might as well make friends with animals. Now there's only one more best friendship I wanted to cover in this video, but here are a few honourable mentions that I thought I'd call out, and I might even explore in another Apex Legends video if you guys are interested. The first honourable mention is Lifeline and Octane. Now I know what you're thinking, surely these two have to be classed as best friends and they should have been easy ones to include in this video. And that is true, but in recent seasons, these two have been more enemies than friends, and only recently have they started repairing their friendship, and so we should definitely call them out as an honourable mention, and maybe we'll follow up with their friendship in the future. We've also got Bangalore, Gibraltar and Rampart. It's easy to forget, but these three knew each other before Rampart even joined the Apex games. Rampart was a famous modder, so it kind of makes sense she would have known people from the Apex games, but it definitely seems like these three knew each other really well. They were often seen hanging out a lot together and even sharing a few drinks as well as some jokes, because Rampart always liked to playfully challenge Bangalore. She knows them so well she actually calls them by their first names, not even by their aliases or their surnames. So that definitely shows a level of friendship, and it's really great to see them smiling. I mean, how often do you see Bangalore smiling? So that's got to mean something. I'll throw one more honourable mention out there just for you Cuban Blisk fans, because he's the main man in Apex Legends, and I'll call out his friendship with Ash. Now this friendship has actually transcended planets, timelines and dimensions. In fact, one of the reasons we even have Ash as a legend is thanks to her friendship with Mr. Blisk. Now don't worry if you're a Cuban Blisk fan, I do have more lore coming soon, so don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on that one. Now, on to our final best friendship for this video in Apex Legends lore, and maybe it's going to be a surprising one for you. It's Caustic and Wattson. Okay, to be fair, this one's more of a father-daughter level relationship, but still a friendship. In fact, even Pathfinder calls it a friendship when he's speaking to Wattson during his quest to find his creator. So you might be wondering, how are Wattson and Caustic friends? It seems a bit of a strange friendship, and you might not be wrong there, but it closely ties in with Wattson's life. I mentioned Wattson moved to King's Canyon with her father earlier in the video, but what I didn't say was that her father actually died just before the ring technology debuted in the Apex games. Unfortunately for Wattson, when her father died, she didn't really have any other family. Her mother died when she was young, and the only main memory she's got of her mother are those little Nessie dolls. But when her father died, that meant she had no one looking out for her, and that's where the legends come in. Bangalore, Gibraltar, Lifeline and Caustic, one day after her father's funeral, found Wattson hiding under a table, and from that point on, they effectively became her family, looking after her and supporting her. And we've seen that kind of relationship develop, in particular with Caustic, and part of the reason for Caustic taking an interest in looking after Wattson, always in the most obvious ways, was because of how he viewed her. And by that, I mean he saw some of himself in Wattson. And of course, I don't mean that unhinged psychopathic side of him, but the intelligence of Wattson is something that resonated with Caustic. And you'll often see Caustic call out how much he respects her work. In some ways, when he does that, he does kind of seem like a proud father. You know, if your father was a toxic, gas-loving psychopath. And to go with that, you do often see glimpses of how much Caustic does care about Wattson. Like with his reaction to Loba during the quest to find the pieces of Ash. When Wattson gets injured, Caustic ends up threatening Loba if anything else bad happens to Wattson, clearly showing how much he cares about her. It's not just about Caustic appreciating Wattson though. This friendship goes the other way as well. We see Wattson understands parts of Caustic that others just don't see. If you didn't know, Caustic is dying from cancer, and part of his experimentation is to try and find a cure for himself. But Wattson has seen glimpses of his pain, and it triggers memories of her real father's suffering. She's also able to see through his evil plans because of this. For example, when Caustic was going to unleash a whirlwind of toxic gas across Solace as part of an experiment, Watson was the one that decided to step in. She makes it clear he's not alone and that she's there for him, while at the same time disapproving of what he's trying to do. You also see Caustic's clear concern for her when she gets caught in the gas. And while Watson uses that moment to subdue him to stop his evil plan, they do eventually make up, and Watson helps Caustic see a better way. And so ultimately this becomes one of the nicest friendships in the game, albeit a slightly strange one. And there you have it, that's a look at some of the best friendships in Apex Legends lore currently. If you're more interested in the relationships, I've mentioned a few times that I already did a relationships video, so do check that out when you finish watching this. You can click the eye icon or click the end screen when this video finishes. I hope this video was interesting. If you don't have any friends, then hey, welcome to the club. Maybe this video will give you something to aspire to. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.